What is going on, everybody? This is Paul, your hip hop relationship and recovery coach, and I'm coming to you again with another episode of Kick Your Butt Out. Before I get off into today's content, I want to say what I always say, and please get this in here so that you can incorporate it into here. And that is, if you're looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. Just that simple. Today's podcast of Kick Your Butt Out, it was inspired by some of my past experiences, as well as some of the experiences of others that I've seen as of late. I want to say it like this. I have the honor, the privilege, and the blessings of God to be able to speak at a treatment center twice a week to men from a recovery standpoint, from a inspirational and motivational standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and just being a servant, giving some service to some people who definitely need it. So it's an honor and a privilege of being able to do that. And what inspired today's podcast was a response that I got from some of the guys last night when I asked a question. And that question is this: but what's next? Yep, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing the other. You're coming to a time where your time here in this place is going to be up. You're going to have to leave this place because this is a 90-day treatment center, a residential. So there's coming to a time where you're going to have to leave this place. And you're doing all of these wonderful things. That's fine and dandy. But what's next? And when I asked that question, the response, the overwhelming response in the room, and it wasn't even verbal. I don't know. Many of them, I don't know. Some of them responded, and I'll get to that. That's a dangerous, the I don't know what's next is a dangerous place to be for people who are seeking lives of recovery. A very dangerous place to be. Because if you don't know what you're going to do next, what are your next steps after you go through these different phases or different seasons or steps in your recovery, if you don't know what's next, if you don't have a what's next already in place, the chances of you going back to what you left are very great. I've done it many times before myself. Here's a couple of the common answers that you will get, whether it's men or women. Again, been there, done it. What are you doing? What are your plans? What's next after you leave here? I'm going back to my family. I'm going back to school. I'm going back to work. All of that's fine and dandy. We need to be responsible. We need to work. We need to follow our career paths. We need to be there for our families. But that's not all. And the tragedy is in that many of us fool ourselves or have this misconception of, because of the fact that I've gotten 30, 60, 90 days of sobriety or abstinence or being away from the madness up under my belt, I'm going to be okay just by going back to my family. I'm going to be okay just by going back to work. I'm going to be okay with just going back to school. I remember my own experiences. It was in my own experiences that, because every time I went to treatment, or every time I went to jail and spent a substantial amount of time in treatment or jail, I always ended up with a good job. Always. So that's a note to you, but you people out here who are felons and saying you can't get a good job, that's a lie. I've always ended up with a good job. The problem was I couldn't keep it. I never got fired from those jobs. I didn't have a what's next. That's what the problem was. I got the job. I'm back with my family. I don't have a what's next. And what usually ended up happening for me is that after I have been with my family a little time, started to pay a few bills here and there, got enough money built up in my bank account, not having the other what's next that I needed set up in my life, I ended up going back to that for which I had left, and that was back to the circles, the places, and the things that was tied to drug use. I did it every time, and the reason why I did it every time is because I didn't have a what's next. And many men and women who I work with right now today that have been in and out of treatment has had that same issue or same problem. We don't have in place a what's next. And what does that mean? When I talk about what's next, what does that mean? I have to have a spiritual foundation set up. I have to have an emotional foundation set up, because many of us who are addicted or have these personalities, we have not mastered the art of being able to deal with our emotions from a healthy standpoint. We don't know how to deal with emotions. So if your what's next, it's not a place where you'll learn how to handle and deal with your emotions and feel those emotions, but not allow those emotions to dictate your actions. The chances are your what's next is going to be back to where you came from. And that's sad, but it is very true. So again, I have to have my spiritual foundation set up, meaning, whatever kind of faith or belief that you have in a high power, in God, in Jesus, Allah, whoever you may want to call it, you have to have a strong sense of connection with that spiritual side of you, because they're going to be, recovery talks about living life on life's terms. Life is going to show up whether you want it to or not, whether you believe it or not. Life is going to show up for you, meaning that a lot of the stuff that you have done or did do is going to come back, and you're going to have to deal with those things. If you're not spiritually set up and grounded, if you're not emotionally set up and grounded, if you're not mentally set up and grounded, if these what's next aren't taken care of or doesn't have a foundation to it, the inevitable happens. From a community standpoint, yes, I'm going back to my family. Yes, I'm going back to work. Yes, I'm going back to school. But what about all of the other aspects of your community? What about the people, the old people that you were hanging around, the old places that you were hanging around, the old things that you were hanging around and doing? If you don't have that set up as part of your what's next, inevitably, back to where you came from is going to be an option. It's going to be the only option. So part of the what's next for you, just as well as myself, has to be, okay, I have to set up a social circle that's going to be conducive to where I want to go. That's going to be conducive to my recovery. I have to set up a community that's going to be conducive to where I want to go. That's going to be conducive to my recovery. That means I have to be around people that's going in the direction of recovery. I have to be hanging around people that's going in the direction of wellness. I got to be hanging around people that's going in the direction of being healthy. I have to be hanging around people that's going in the direction of being who they was created to be. I can't be around people who, I don't know what's next. You can't be around people who don't know what's next. And this is not just for people who are recovering from substance use or whatever the vices is. This is for people who have been through something and are working their way to go to something else. If you have come out of something and you want to go somewhere else that's going to be healthy for you, that's going to be helpful for you, that's going to heal you, you have to have a what's next in place. I don't care who you are. If you don't have a what's next in place, where you came from, it's going to always be available. Why do you think that many people go back to abusive relationships? But what's next? They don't have that in place. That's one of the reasons why many of us go back to drug and alcohol use, because we unfortunately don't have a clear what's next for our lives. I can go on and on about this. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the public, of my listeners, of my subscribers. Maybe that's you. Maybe you know somebody. Maybe you have a loved one, or maybe you're in a place where you're about to start a journey out of something because it's not healthy, and you wanted to go to something that's going to be healthy, and you don't quite know what's next. My strongest encouragement and my plea with everybody who's listening to this podcast or sharing this podcast, please get a what's next, solid and concrete in your life and in your journey. Because like I said at the beginning, there are stages of change that we're going to have to go through. And we have to make the proper arrangements to be able to meet that change. We have to have the proper arrangements in place to meet that stage. Because if you don't, back to is where most of us end up at. And unfortunately, lots of us who end up back don't make it back on this side. And we want to avoid that. We want to avoid that. So people, please, whether it's for your recovery, whether it's for your healing, whether it's for your family, whether it's for your relationships, please put in order and in place a what's next before you get to the what's next stage. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself in a place and in a position that you don't want to go, that you don't want to be. This is Paul, your hip-hop relationship and recovery coach. And I said what was on my heart. I'm asking anybody who's listening to this podcast to please share, like, comment, post, or repost about what this subject matter is, because it is very important and vital to all of our growth or lack thereof. Again, this is Paul, your hip-hop relationship and recovery coach. I'm signing out, but before I go, as usual, if you're looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. Until next time we meet, be well, do the next right thing, and may God bless you all. I'll see y'all soon. Peace.